Hey guys, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 4. Now for today's video, I thought I would do a wrap-up of all of the books that I managed to read in November, and that was 5. So I'm still going pretty strong with my reading. So I'm gonna wrap up the books that I read this month in the order of least liked to most liked, because that's kind of the format that I think I want to start adopting. So the book that I read this month that I liked the least was actually The Girls by Emma Cline. Now this has been all over BookTube and just popular culture in general. So this book basically follows a fictionalized version of the Manson cult and murder. It focuses on a group of girls, obviously called The Girls, and how they got involved in killing these people. Now, this sounds like the kind of book that I would really enjoy. I like books about murder. I'm really big on kind of mystery. I really like reading about cults and historical things, so I thought this was going to be great. However, I found it really forgettable. Nothing in the story struck me as being very original. This follows a cult. And you would think that with some of the cult aspects there would be some craziness that goes on. And nothing seemed overly weird. There weren't enough descriptions, I don't think, about the actual workings of the cult, and I think that had to do with the narrator. The narrator is a younger girl who has gotten sucked into this cult where she lives. I think that was probably why it didn't push it as far as it could have, because the narrator was so young and she didn't understand. However, they kept jumping out of the story to go visit this woman when she's older. So she's in her mid-40s or whatever, and they're following this little storyline of her staying at this cottage. So there's never a real sense of she may be in trouble, because you already know she's not, because the start of the story is her saying that she got out of all of this trouble and wasn't ever indicted for any of this cult stuff. The biggest problem I had was it just felt disconnected. It felt very alright, well, you can watch these characters and not really understand their motives and not understand any really of the backstory. And I think so much of this book rested upon you understanding the Manson murders and knowing kind of what was coming, that none of it seemed surprising. This was sold as a Manson murder book, so you can't not think that people are going to expect what happens. And when it does happen, it's super underwhelming. Alright, so next I got a hold of a copy of The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. This is her newest book. Came out very recently, about a girl who is seemingly not ingesting anything and still being able to live. Again, this is kind of a historical fiction type book. It follows a nurse who was trained under Florence Nightingale, who goes to observe this girl and basically try and catch her out actually eating something. Throughout the whole book, I kind of kept expecting there to be some sort of magical realism, and there never was. And I think the book could have been stronger if there was a little bit more of a magical, mystical thing. You never once get the impression that she actually could be living without food. It's just a matter of, why is she not dead? So I think if they had emphasized more mystical elements, I think it would have been more of a factor of you actually trying to figure out if she is living without food. But because there was no sense of any real magical thing going on, I never once thought she was. So I was just continuously being like, well, she's eating somehow. She's just starving to death. There's no mystery in this, and there's not really any reason for me to think that she's not surviving off of some sort of food substance. It's just that you haven't caught her yet. The ending wrapped up way too nicely. I didn't like the ending at all. I thought it was trivial, I guess. I haven't read anything else by Emma Donoghue. I did like her writing, and I do think that if that book had been taken in more of a magical realism-esque direction, then it would have been more interesting. Once it finally got into the actual mystery of kind of what was happening, it got better. So the mystery aspect of it either needed to be expanded more, or the fact that magical mystical realism actually playing a part needed to be expanded on. Next, Drew and I listened to a couple of audiobooks, the first being The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, which is a Flavia de Luce mystery. The narrator was the only thing about this book that I was not so fond of. I think there's something in the way she narrates the young girl voice that I found kind of irritating, which is too bad because I think it is the same person who narrates all of them. So this follows an 11-year-old girl who's really into chemistry and poison, and a body ends up in their garden at their estate. I don't remember when this is set. 1950, I think. They basically are just trying to figure out who killed this guy and why he ended up in this garden of this family. She, in her kind of own special way, tries to deduce who did it and why they did it. It felt very info-dumpy at times. There was an enormous section where she and her father are talking, and he just, I mean, it's like an hour or two's worth of information is just shoved. But the story was really good, and so I would continue with the series just because I feel like maybe that was just his kind of getting his feet under him for writing this mystery series. But I'm hoping that they are less info-dumpy. The character of Flavia is very precocious. She's very intelligent. She's very not 11, which is kind of how I prefer my children heroines, so that I don't have to deal with children telling me a story. Instead, I deal with like a precocious little 11-year-old who really doesn't sound like an 11-year-old. So that didn't bother me. I know that bothers some people. They don't like Flavia very much because they find her very precocious and very just unrealistic. I did like the chemistry part of it. If you are not interested in science or chemistry, that would probably get really grating, I would think, because she spells out a lot of these like chemical formulas and how she gets this poison and that sort of thing. So that could be irritating for a lot of people. I, however, liked it because I am science-minded, so that was nice for me. The other audiobook that I wanted to mention is actually a reread for me. We listened to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I liked it when I read it the first time. I liked it this time. And finally, my favorite book that I read this month was Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. Now, Equal Rights, I have a full blog post review that I will link in the cards or something. I've never read any Terry Pratchett, and this is one of the first books in the Discworld series, which I think is all like he wrote just like 40 something books in this Discworld world. This starts a series about witches and follows a girl who was given the staff of a wizard when she was a baby, kind of accidentally, kind of not, because wizards are men, they are not women. Women are witches. And they are actually like very separate things in this world. They're not just, you know, like gendered pronouns of magic people. Witches are different than wizards. She kind of has to go and figure out how she's going to be trained as a wizard when basically nobody wants to accept her. The story follows Esk, our main character, the wizard, and Granny Weatherwax, who is her kind of travel companion. She's been trying to teach her witchcraft and has decided she needs to go to the school for wizards because her power is just too different from her own. Granny Weatherwax was the best character for me. She was funny, and I just really enjoyed her and her perspective. The journey that they go on is really funny, and it's really interesting. And I'm looking forward to the next couple books in that series because I know it mostly follows Granny Weatherwax and kind of her life, which is good, I think, because I think she was the most interesting character. So those are all the books that I read. However, when we were out in Minneapolis, I did manage to pop over to a bookstore actually owned by Garrison Keillor, and if you don't know who Garrison Keillor is, you probably are my age or younger. But he owns a bookstore in Minneapolis, and I didn't realize that. So I went to his bookstore and actually picked up some books that I will show you here, because I have them right behind me. Okay, so I picked up 3 books while I was in his bookstore. They were books that I can't really find anywhere else, so I was pretty excited that this little indie bookstore was carrying smaller pressed books and just not, you know, a ton of the same books that you find a lot of places, so I'm happy that I was able to find these. The first one being, is not going to be any surprise to anybody, it's His Bloody Project by Graham McCrae Brunette, I don't know, Graham, McRae Burnett. This is obviously a finalist for the Man Booker. This is the one that I really wanted to get to, and I haven't gotten to it yet. So I'm really happy now. I own it, and it should be a good time. It looks very interesting. It's got all sorts of like little police reports and documents, and the words are actually really big. Next, I wanted to try and find a Ruth Ozeki book because I haven't read anything by her. So I thought I would pick up My Year of Meats. So I'll read you the little back thing. When documentarian Jane Tagaki Little finally lands a job producing My American Wife, a Japanese television show sponsored by an American meat exporting business, she discovers some unsavory truths about love, fertility, and a hormone called DES. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, Akiko Ueno, a beleaguered Japanese housewife, struggles to escape her child-craving husband. When Jane and Akiko's life intersect, the deepest concerns of our time are illuminated, how the past informs the present, and how we live and love in an ever-shrinking world. This sounds really good, and this is a very pretty edition, I think. So that looks really interesting. I'm actually really hoping to get to this soon because I think that sounds great. And then finally, I picked up The Dumb House by John Burnside. This is the vintage edition, so it's the vintage red spine. This is my first vintage red spine. It's very exciting. I've been wanting to read this, but I can't find it anywhere. I can buy it online, but I really wanted to go to a shop and just pick it up when I found it. So I did. So I will read you, if you don't know what this one is about, I will read you the little blurb. As a child, Luke's mother often tells him the story of The Dumb House, an experiment on newborn babies raised in silence designed to test the innateness of language. As Luke grows up, his interest in language and the delicate balance of life and death leads to an amateur dissection of small animals, a tiny heart reveals still pumping as life trickles away. But as an adult, following the death of his mother, Luke's obsession deepens in a haunting and bizarre experiment on Luke's own children. So I'm really excited to read this. So I actually managed to get quite a few books that I was pretty excited about at this bookstore. I'm just taking off a sticker, don't mind me. I think that is going to do my wrap up for this month. I hope you guys are enjoying Vlogmas, and I will see you tomorrow with another video. Bye!
Bye.